I muttered in disbelief to myself. I can't believe I can't unlock the door. After a grueling day at work, I stood before the entrance, my belongings scattered haphazardly as if they had been discarded like trash. The front door looked different, perhaps replaced, and stubbornly refused to budge no matter how hard I tried. This was the final insult in a long line of hardships I had endured while living with my in-laws. With a newfound determination, I made a resolute decision. I would never set foot in that house again. I began gathering my things, vowing to load them into my car and retreat to the safety of my parents' home. Months went by, and just when I thought I had severed all ties, a message arrived from my estranged in-laws, reawakening a connection I had believed lost forever. Hello, I'm Hazel. I'm 35, and my husband Jack is 5 years younger. I was completely focused on my career, and Jack happened to be my subordinate. To be honest, marriage wasn't on my mind. I had never really dated, and the idea of settling down felt distant. Yet, here I am, married, all because of his relentless pursuit. He promised I could continue my career after our wedding while he took care of the household chores. It intrigued me, this prospect of marriage. I never opposed having children, although I wasn't particularly keen on marriage. But as I approached 35, I realized that if I wanted to start a family, I needed to make a decision. So I married Jack. For a while, it was just the two of us, and true to his word, he supported my career while managing most of the household responsibilities. But everything changed about 6 months into our marriage when my father-in-law passed away unexpectedly. His sudden death left my mother-in-law and my younger sister-in-law, Evelyn, who is 33, in shock. They claimed they couldn't cope on their own. Although Evelyn freelanced and earned a decent income, her focus on fan activities meant her financial stability was fragile. I always believed she should seek a full-time job. When Evelyn approached me, along with my mother-in-law, Jack suggested we all live together. Hazel, have you considered moving in with my mom and sister? You can keep freelancing, and having them around would ease the household workload. Jack, I'm fine with continuing my work, but I'm not sure about taking on more household chores. If your mom moves in, shouldn't she be handling most of the household tasks? That's a fair point. I'll discuss it with them. Just think about it, please. I want to hear your thoughts before I say anything further. Ultimately, Jack reassured me that his family would take care of all household chores. I considered pushing for a written agreement but kept that thought to myself. After all, they were family, and I wanted to trust they would keep their word. So we moved into my husband's family home. On our first day, I made a point to greet my mother-in-law. I'm excited about living together. As Jack might have mentioned, I'll continue my work, so I hope you and Evelyn can manage the household chores. Without even looking at me, my mother-in-law replied, "Why did Jack marry someone like her? She works, so all the household chores will fall on me. Isn't that what a wife is supposed to do, handle both work and the home?" Her expectation that she would shoulder everything was utterly baffling. She ensured her words cut through the air as she turned to leave. What? This isn't what I expected at all. My mother-in-law's remarks filled me with dread about our future together. As we quietly unpacked our belongings, Evelyn suddenly appeared at the doorway and quipped, "Looks like Jack got stuck with a less than adorable sister-in-law. Poor guy." With that, she swiftly exited. Not again. First my mother-in-law, and now Evelyn. I couldn't understand why they would choose to live with me after speaking about me like that. It would soon become clear that it was all about my financial contribution. On our first day under the same roof, despite their earlier sarcastic remarks, both my mother-in-law and Evelyn ignored me completely. They managed to whip up meals only when Jack was present, yet they showed no interest in helping with cleaning or laundry for me. I tried to confront them about their broken promises several times, but every time I addressed my mother-in-law respectfully as "ma'am," she shot me a sharp glare and turned away, making it clear she had no interest in engaging with me. Evelyn didn't mirror her mother's behavior exactly, yet I found myself unable to stand up to either of them. As a result, doing my own laundry and cleaning after long days at work became a tedious routine. I wanted to confide in my husband about what was happening, but I hesitated out of sympathy for him. However, things only escalated when they began to experience financial difficulties. They started pressuring me for more money for leisure activities, but their requests felt evasive. as if they were too timid to confront me directly. Instead, they left notes under my food. Just today, I found a message from my mother-in-law. We're in a tight spot this month. Could you lend us $300? I considered bringing it up with my husband, but he seemed financially strained himself, often asking, could we cut down on expenses this month? His social obligations and drinking habits were adding up, and I knew he was feeling the pressure. When he was my subordinate, I had always made sure he didn't overspend on unnecessary outings. But after switching departments post-marriage, he struggled to decline invitations, leading to rising costs. I found it hard to discuss their financial demands with him, so I reluctantly acquiesced to their requests, treating it as a loan. This pattern persisted for 2 years. My husband became increasingly comfortable not contributing to household expenses, often urging me to trim costs each month with apparent indifference. I too had grown accustomed to this routine. I felt trapped in a never-ending cycle of schemes, yet I continued to do one thing, more on that soon. One evening, after returning from work, I was met with a shocking sight, numerous items scattered outside the house. As I drew closer, my heart sank. They were my belongings. What is this? I seethed in anger at the sight of my things treated so carelessly. Determined to express my grievances, I attempted to unlock the front door, only to discover that my key no longer worked. Damn it, they changed the locks while I was gone. I can't take this anymore. I surveyed the disarray of my belongings and contemplated my next move. That's when I noticed another note among the items. It read, "Don't ever return. We don't want to see your face. Consider yourself lucky we didn't toss your stuff out." What terrible in-laws my mother-in-law and Evelyn were. It was clear they were the masterminds behind this. I wondered what Jack had to say about it all. But by that point, it didn't matter to me. Thankfully, I had my car keys with me. I quickly loaded as many of my things as I could into the car and drove straight to my parents' house. I felt a wave of relief knowing my belongings were safe. At least my work wouldn't be affected. The next day, when I arrived at my parents' home, they were visibly shocked but welcomed me back with open arms. It was comforting to be back in my childhood home, a place I hadn't visited much in the past 2 busy years. As I sipped the tea my mother brewed, surrounded by familiar warmth, my father asked, "Why did you bring all your things here? Did you leave their house?" Marriage requires patience, I reflected, feeling the weight of those words. My interactions with my mother-in-law and Evelyn had been sparse over the last 2 years, limited mostly to the occasional reminder notes about money. Jack had gradually become reliant solely on my income, and lately, it felt like he viewed me merely as a convenient ATM. I had endured this situation for far too long. When I confided in my parents, they listened with empathy. "Hazel, you've been patient enough. We won't ask you to endure any longer. Now that they've driven you away, there's no reason to go back. Maybe you should consider sending Jack divorce papers." That's true. He seemed like a decent young man when you married him. But money has a way of changing people. It's a shame, my father added. Both of my parents showed genuine sympathy for me, a kindness I hadn't experienced in the past 2 years. Tears unexpectedly welled in my eyes. "Has it been that tough for you?" my father asked, his expression filled with concern. "No, it's just that I haven't felt this level of sympathy in a long time. It's comforting, just like you said, Dad. I'll send Jack the divorce papers, but I want to observe the situation for a while. I have a feeling something interesting might unfold soon." Indeed, I sensed that something was on the horizon. Surprisingly, that moment arrived about 3 months later. By then, I had moved out of my parents' home and settled into my own apartment. I never imagined I could reclaim control over my earnings and spend as I pleased. I hired a housekeeping service to handle chores, allowing me to enjoy my days off with trips and purchases I had long desired. Each day reminded me of the value of my hard-earned income. I began questioning why I had endured those 2 years. It dawned on me that perhaps I had been influenced or even manipulated by my in-laws. Then, precisely 3 months after my keys had been changed and my belongings discarded, my smartphone buzzed with an unexpected call. Initially, I thought about ignoring it. After dismissing the first call, my phone buzzed again, followed by a third call in quick succession. They must be in trouble, I surmised. I picked up the next call, and just then, the fourth call came through. "Hazel, where are you? I went to your parents' house, but they wouldn't tell me." I also tried your workplace, but they wouldn't disclose your whereabouts. It was my mother-in-law, a woman who had ignored me for the past 2 years. Her voice, which I hadn't heard in so long, sounded tentative. Despite answering, I remained silent, relishing the anticipation of what she might say next. "Hello, family? Are you there? Please come back and restore our lives. We can't even afford to go out and enjoy ourselves. What are we supposed to do now?" I thought living without spending money on leisure would suffice. But evidently, that's not the case. Our phone and electricity are about to be cut off. We're at our wits' end. Please come back immediately. Does she not realize she's only thinking of herself? Shouldn't she start with an apology for throwing me out? I thought, feeling resolute about my lack of intention to respond. "Hazel, you're not saying anything. Are you listening at all? Doesn't it bother you to hear that we're in such dire straits?" Realizing she wasn't going to offer an apology, I decided to end the call and pressed the button to hang up. It was clear she had no concept of remorse. The next day, my phone rang again. "Hello, Hazel. Why did you ignore Mom's call yesterday? Even though we're in trouble, you didn't make any effort to help." She couldn't tell if you were even listening. Ignoring calls like that isn't very mature. This time, it was Evelyn calling. Honestly, calls from Evelyn had always been the most bothersome, and I couldn't believe she had the nerve to lecture me about not answering. They had ignored me for 2 years, and suddenly I was the one in the wrong? I planned to endure the call a bit longer, but without an apology. I had no intention of responding. I heard from Mom that we're facing financial troubles at home. Our phone and electricity might get cut off soon. Without AC in this heat, we could suffer from heat stroke. Can you live with that? If our phone goes dead, how will we reach you? So please come back soon and help us pay the overdue bills. Her selfish demands made it all too easy for me to keep ignoring her. "Hey, are you listening? You haven't said a word. Oh, are you still upset about what happened 3 months ago? That was obviously just a joke. You're overreacting. As an adult, you should know the difference between a joke and a serious matter. Stop being stubborn and come back home." They threw out my belongings like trash and changed the locks so I couldn't get in. That's a clear message for me not to return, even if they claim it was all a joke or prank. It's hard to believe since Evelyn doesn't seem interested in apologizing either. I decided to end the call. It would be a waste of time to listen to her any longer. The next day, I finally received a call from my husband. "Hello, Hazel. I'm sorry. My mother, my sister, and we all realize we've done terrible things. Can you come back? Our household is falling apart. We're out of money. Everyone's on edge, and tensions are high. We sincerely apologize and want you back. Please." At least my husband seemed to feel the need to apologize. But it was too late now. Why had he ignored me for 3 months? If it had only been the first 3 days, I might have considered returning. But 3 months was too long. I had embraced my new life, relishing every moment of my independence. There was no reason for me to return to that family now. "I appreciate your apology, but given everything that's happened, I have no intention of coming back." "Jack, why were you unreachable for 3 months? How could you do that as a husband?" I looked into things, and guess what I found out? You've been cheating, haven't you? That's what the detective agency told me. Thanks for treating me like an ATM for 2 years. I'll be sending divorce papers. Please handle it accordingly. Maybe my husband thought he wouldn't get caught. What a fool! Yet he still had the nerve to say, "I want you to come back." I replied, "If you reimburse me for all the living expenses for the 3 of us over the past 2 years and repay the money I lent you, maybe I'll consider it. Let's see. That's about $220,000. Can you manage that?" I said it mockingly, knowing he couldn't pay. After that, he fell silent and abruptly ended the call, perhaps finally realizing my decision was firm. What happened next? When I sent the divorce papers along with a bill for emotional distress, he promptly returned to sign them. Now all I need to do is file them at the city office, and the divorce will be finalized. As for the compensation, he transferred the money right away. In fact, I included a note with the bill, threatening to expose him to his company if he didn't pay promptly. Fearful of this, he likely sought a loan to cover the compensation. I heard from sources that their family home is now on the market. It seems they're struggling financially and trying to raise funds. However, Selling their primary residence hastily means they'll have to rent elsewhere. Considering the cost of rent and utilities, selling their house may not have been the wisest decision. They were likely driven by an immediate need for cash without thinking through the long-term consequences. Whatever happens to that family is no longer my concern. As for me, I'm thoroughly enjoying my single life. I've had my fill of marriage,